Hello and welcome to the Weekend Spectator. My name is Grace Reilly,
I'm Paul Kengor. Welcome back.
and we're excited to be with you today. We're going to be talking about a piece that Paul Kengor wrote for the American Spectator on Tim Mellon. He's going to give us some background into this, which is an important issue as conservatives to kind of dive into. The left really hates conservative donors. And has made that clear time and time again. The New York Times just made it clear, which is what Kengor's piece goes over. So without further ado, just tell us a bit about what inspired you to write this piece, and first, what the New York Times did.
Yeah, they do this all the time. Okay. The idea to New York Times, left-wing newspapers, liberal newspapers, the idea of them living in a world, by the way, their DEI world was supposed to be about diversity, right? And inclusion, right? Uh,
Unless you don't agree with them.
right, exactly. They want an America where basically every billionaire philanthropist is a left-winger. Okay. And even if the left has 95 out of the top 100 donors in the country, all right, they're not happy. All right. The other five have got to be demonized, exposed, written about on front pages, right? Portrayed as these cretins, these pariahs, or these monsters. Their philanthropy, especially if they give to conservative causes, the Heritage Foundation or Donald Trump, has to be seen as like almost criminal, right? And you'll read these articles, and the tone of the article will be kind of like, and then he gave money to, right? Picture like kind of dramatic music in the background, right? Bach's toccata and fugue,
Pretty much, yeah.
right? And the guy comes out, Tim Mellon next to Bela Lugosi. It's crazy. They did this. There was a Times piece 2 years ago, and it was about two friends of American Spectator, Barry Side, who's subscribed to us for years, Leonard Leo, who I think wrote for us a few years back, and they created the group Marble Freedom Trust. And when Barry Side gave a bunch of money to Leonard Leo to start these different foundations, it was treated as like this criminal conspiracy that, that these guys, the left just went like barking mad over this. And you can read, I put hyperlinks in the article. These liberal sources referring to Barry Side as this pro-Israel Jewish billionaire, right? Imagine if right-wing sources talked about him like that, referring to Leonard Leo as the Catholic theocrat, right? So you've got this Jewish conspirator and this Catholic conspirator as co-conspirators creating this insidious Marble Freedom Trust. And what are they doing with their money that's so bad? Well, they're giving it to conservatives, right? And meanwhile, you're reading this like, is this like illegal or something? Are they not allowed to do this?
He
Yeah, they're
obviously,
allowed to do.
and Mellon gives money to a lot of conservative causes, but is Trump's biggest donor, I believe, or one of them at least. And that's why.
Yes, yeah. So here comes Tim Mellon, who yeah, I'm talking to you here from Grove City College, or Institute for Faith and Freedom. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, right? Born in Pittsburgh. The Mellon family is from this area. They are just heroes of this area of America. I could just sit here right now and rattle off for a half an hour different things that the Mellons have built. All right. Carnegie Mellon University, the banks. My mother was a bank teller for Mellon Bank. That's what helped put us through college. The National Gallery of Art was started by Andrew Mellon, the Treasury Secretary in the 1920s. And by the way, this New York Times article on Tim Mellon goes after Andrew Mellon in the 1920s. There's a long history of going after Andrew Mellon. FDR tried to throw Andrew Mellon in jail in a really hideous case where he pursued this old man for years on charges of tax evasion. And by the way, Andrew Mellon was completely exonerated by a jury of his peers on this. And I'm not exaggerating, Andrew Mellon died not long after that. It took a toll on him. And a good friend of American Spectator was Richard Mellon Scaife, Dick Scaife. By the way, so Grace, this was before you were born, but you probably know this anyway because you're so knowledgeable about all this stuff. But it was Dick Scaife who was said to be the head by Hillary Clinton, the head of the vast right-wing conspiracy, along with R. Emmett Till Jr. and the American Spectator. He was our biggest donor at one point in the 1990s. So the New York Times has trashed Dick Scaife before. They've been going after the Mellon family for years. So now here, all of a sudden, comes Tim Mellon. He's 82 years old. He's the grandson of Andrew Mellon. He would be the cousin of the late Dick Scaife. And what's his great sin that now means that he must be exposed on the front page of the New York Times? By the way, in multiple articles, I think they've done 3 articles on him since like June 20th, right? They're really on this guy. What did he do? Well,
Yeah.
he's given money to RFK Jr. Right? That's bad, because RFK Jr. could take votes away from the Democrats. By the way, because of that, I wouldn't say that we should consider him a far right figure if he's supporting RFK Jr., but that doesn't matter to the media. What really matters is he's given more money apparently to Donald Trump than any other single donor. So, Tim Mellon must be destroyed. So they do this hit piece on him.
The Trump that he did to RFK, but both of them he gave significant amounts to.
That's right. That's
Really
right.
doesn't want the Democrats to win.
Right, exactly. That's right. So that's another big crime, right? But he's portrayed as this supporter of this far right donor. In fact, first off, as soon as you read the article in the New York Times, they mention that he supports Trump. So ooh, bad enough. And then they go right into it, almost in the same paragraph, this kind of funky story about a rock in his front yard.
Rhode Island, which I recognize. So reading through your article, that was the most interesting part to me because I grew up in Connecticut, but my dad
Yeah.
and family are all from Rhode Island. And I regularly went to Narragansett, Rhode Island to surf
Ah,
over the summers growing up,
wow.
actually.
Wow.
And Narragansett, Rhode Island is the location of this house of his with this rock being removed, but you can tell the story. But that caught my eye immediately from that experience.
Well, that's cool that you know what that is. But
Mhm.
they make the rock story. They twist that in a way to make Tim Mellon sound like some kind of a crackpot,
Yeah, they
right?
said what was it? So they said he removed some rock from his property that people liked walking up to, something like that. But you can read the article to hear more of the details. So we
Right.
shouldn't give too much away.
And
But
that's done just to make him look like he's a little kind of off,
point being, ridiculous story for, yeah.
But that's how they frame these things. And then they go through and they talk about Tim Mellon, where he was from. They go after his, no surprise, his grandfather, Andrew Mellon. One of the few photos is a picture of Andrew Mellon in between Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover. Dun, 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 right? Why not put Bela Lugosi in there too? Photoshop him in there. That's Dracula, by the way, Bela Lugosi, or Boris Karloff, Frankenstein.
Mhm.
So the whole thing is just, it's ridiculous that they do this. Look, I don't care if there are liberal billionaires who donate money. All right, I can live in an America and in a world where people give their own money, their own damn money, to whoever they want to give it to. All right. The left has George Soros. By the way, the left has all of the foundations of kind of
Gates.
old conservative entrepreneurs from the 19th century who made all of their money in free markets, actually capitalism, right? And then they bequeath that money to their liberal kids. And these
That's
are
the,
all now liberal left-wing foundations.
yeah.
There are very few conservative foundations even left. There's the Scaife Foundation, Sarah Scaife Foundation. There's the Bradley Foundation, but the left has taken over almost all of them. And are they not happy about that? No, they're still angry. What are they angry about? Well, there's still some conservative ones left. And they always treat their mere existence, these conservative foundations, as, again, almost kind of like criminal, right? Suspect. And I get so sick of it. It's why I don't even read the New York Times. But Bob Terrell, founder of American Spectator, he had called me and he said, Paul, you got to see this article in the New York Times. You're really going after Tim Mellon. And so I read it and I thought, this is so unjust. I got to write an article defending this guy. I had never met him before, and haven't met him since. but what I know what the Mellon family has done for this region, my region, the world, the country. By the way, this is interesting. The Dick Scaife writes about this in his memoirs. When Dick Scaife was 8 years old, he said he had never met FDR in his life, but he saw him when he was 8 years old. Where was this? It was 1941, and Dick and his family, little Dick Scaife, little boy at this time, and his family, they go to the National Gallery of Art dedication in DC with FDR. So there's FDR and all the progressives and all the liberals celebrating the creation of this National Gallery of Art in 1941, created by, bequeathed by who? By Andrew Mellon, who had died 4 years earlier in 1937, probably from a broken heart, and if not from stress and everything else, from FDR and his minions. I mean, liberals, you want to talk about an abuse of executive power? You should see what FDR did to try to throw Andrew Mellon in jail. And even you liberals would read this and say, man, that was abusive. I mean, that was an abuse of civil liberties. That's outrageous what FDR did to him. But he did.
Well, and it sounds quite familiar too. It's not the
Yeah.
left still does that today. I mean, they'll use anything they can to get rid of someone. I mean, Trump's obviously faced all sorts of things hauled at him. I mean, that's just one example. But yeah, I mean, Tim Mellon, this is a perfect example of that, where it's an unrelenting attack. I mean, there were the three articles at once, but also just the fact that this is over the years. This is generational
Right.
it's generational that the in the for the left, that the left keeps going on this family.
By the way, the Times in that piece, that hit piece on Tim Mellon, Grace, they talk about, oh, in his younger years, he was very liberal and he supported Ted Kennedy, and and again, that's all good. Then all of a sudden, right? Then he makes this turn to the right, and while you're reading this, you're like, hmm. And I bet during those liberal years when he was giving all that money to Ted Kennedy, I bet there wasn't a hit piece on him in the New York Times then, was there? And no, there was not. Because as long as you're giving the money to the left, no hit piece is necessary. You're a hero if you're doing that. But as soon as you give it to Trump, right, or the Heritage Foundation, or create the Marble Freedom Trust, well, you are just some sort of a monster or a reprobate. Whereas the New York Times called Dick Scaife the far right real life Citizen Kane. That's what they called him in his obituary.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that's another thing. The media, I mean, the this is everyone's been saying this, and it's true that you don't hate the media enough, just in the sense of, yeah, it is completely one-sided who the hit.
It's terrible.
It reminded me too of, I can't remember if it was a senator, some congressman who passed away. The media decided to immediately print "climate denier dies" or something like that. Did you
Yeah.
see this? It was something along those lines where you can compare, and people did compare past stories of congressmen passing away and what headline the media wrote. And of course, that for the liberal congressman, there weren't headlines like that, but for the conservative one, he got "climate denier passes
Mhm.
away" or something like that. So
By the
there,
way, if you Google RFK Jr., right, it says, anti-vax conspiracy theorist, right? Hey, RFK Jr., you want to get rid of that label? Don't run as an independent. Run as a Democrat.
exactly. Well,
Uh,
and the other
we'll
thing
change
too,
that right away.
yeah, with the media, the other thing too. So this happened this past week. People on X pointed this out. Elon Musk gave it a lot of traction, so he was resharing this. But there is censorship and some sort of search ban on Donald Trump on Google. If you
Mm.
search Donald Trump, Kamala comes up. If you search Trump
Ah,
rally, Kamala comes up. If you search Trump assassination, it doesn't come up. It's not, so it doesn't pop up in what you can click on to search. Ronald Reagan assassination comes up, and I think maybe JFK, but
mm.
Trump's does not. So there's also forces at work, real censorship in the media, which we already know. And we talked about last week how the media has completely exalted Kamala Harris, but also on Google, in search engines, on social media, where there's clear, and you can test these things out. You can look it up online to see what people are talking about. But that has been a development over the last week where people noticed that not only are the media stories slanted one way, which that's nothing new, of course, but the search results, where how crazy is that? That if you search Donald Trump, nothing, Kamala comes up and is planted at the top of the page like that. So a lot of stuff like that is going on too. So the political warfare is unrelenting. It's everywhere. I actually, so just with working in politics, working for Restoration of America and being online all the time, constantly looking at the news all day, every day, I was talking to my mom and just saying, "Oh my, this is just so annoying because it is a constant warfare back and forth about ridiculous things and also things that aren't true." So there's just this constant censorship, constant media reporting that's biased, constant lies that are coming up because of the biased media reporting to combat. It's just a complete mess. And with that in mind, I understand why people get so sick of it and kind of don't want to pay attention to the election, where of course we have to pay attention because of what it means, right? We have to pay attention to the elections so that we are responsible citizens electing leaders that are going to carry our nation forward, preserve freedom, and give us a better present and future here in America. But it's getting harder by the day, really, to want to be informed and paying attention with how insane everything keeps getting.
When you talk about threats to democracy, right? I mean, a genuine, and the left says this, right? Democracy, what does that even mean? They never say what it means. But I mean, one kind of bulwark of democracy would be freedom of speech, freedom of the press.
Mhm.
And it's really tough. I mean, I get this all the time as a professor, as editor of the American Spectator. People will say to me, like, hey, where can I truly go to get objective news? Right? They'll ask me, "What do you read in the morning? Where do you go?" And it's a struggle, Grace, right? I especially if you want to tell somebody, I want to give them a sincere answer, right? Like as a professor, I don't want to give them an answer like, well, yeah, here's my favorite, right-wing websites, right? The liberal professor.
The
Well, you
American
could go to a
Spectator.
moderate newspaper like the New York Times or listen to a moderate source like NPR or MSNBC, right? No, but yeah, it's hard to get genuinely balanced sources. I do recommend, since I brought this up, I'm a big advocate for Real Clear Politics. And I mean, if you go there, I don't know of any other publication in the country that so carefully lays out, right? They'll post all the articles that they have for the day, and they reprint a lot of our stuff at Spectator, but it'll be top piece, David Catron, the American Spectator on Kamala Harris, right? Then it'll be New York Times writer on Kamala Harris, right? Then somebody conservative New York Post on Biden, then someone liberal Washington Post on Biden. So they are perfectly balanced. It's really quite remarkable. But that is far and away the exception. Most of the other places, um, one thing I like about conservative sources is they at least admit they're conservatives, right? Fox doesn't hide their bias. What's so egregious, I think, what's worse is when you have the New York Times or Washington Post or NPR saying, "Well, who are we?" Well, we're a neutral news organization, right? The Associated Press. No, you're not. You're left wing, and it's so clear, and it seeps into all of your reporting, including on people like Tim Mellon, right? It's very clear what you're doing here. You don't do to Tim Mellon what you're doing right now to whoever the top liberal donor is to Kamala Harris. We're not going to see pieces like that on Kamala. You're going after Tim Mellon because he supports Trump and conservative causes. And it's not fair. There's just this kind of inherent sense of injustice in the whole thing, which is why I wrote the piece and Spectator published it.
Yeah, and a
We have
really
to defend, we have to defend our friends. Then again, like I said, I don't even know him, so I can't say he's a friend. But we have to defend people who need defending. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, and the piece is definitely worth reading, especially with the fact that it's up against multiple pieces on the other side. So it's worth reading. And just to your point before we closed about finding news, this is the younger person in politics answer, maybe too. But what I've found to do is you have to pick a few news places. I go on X, you put post notifications on, and with that, you get your own little stream area where you can get
Right.
notifications from multiple different sources so you can see these headlines from both sides. And that's what I've found to be the easiest way to do that.
You
And
have to read everything, right? Which liberals, I know they're like this because it's why they're liberals. They don't read our side.
yeah,
They don't. They lie to themselves and deceive themselves. Frankly, I think it's why they remain liberals because they don't even consider our side.
for sure.
But yeah, but we read both sides. I think it's why we're conservatives because we read both sides and say, all right, that side I think is clearly wrong on balance, right? But you've got to read both sides.
Yeah, and that is what you have to do. And also, before we close, so a book written by Dr. Jeffrey Bilbrough from Grove City College, it's called
Oh, yeah.
Reading the Times. I just feel that's a good thing to bring up too. I read that and I enjoyed it so much because it was a commentary from a Christian perspective on the news, basically making the big takeaway point is that we should be first reading the eternal, not the right now, in the sense. So as Christians, we should be careful to not be wrapped up and anxious in everything going on immediately in the news, but we should be way more anchored in the eternal and in eternal truths and in what God says. So that's the first point there. But that book, Reading the Times, I'd recommend too. As people watching this, you probably stay up with politics a lot. And I found that to be a really great recentering reminder that
He's
while
really good. Yeah, he
it's
writes for Front
really
Porch
good.
Republic.
Mhm.
Right, right. And he's at Grove City College, which is where I am right now. It's where Grace graduated from May 2024. And it's why you have to send your kids to colleges like that.
Yeah,
I mean, if
growth
when you don't, you're
right.
perpetuating the same kind of problem that we've been talking about since the start of this episode.
Hey, I'm about to if my kids wanna go to Grove City, great, if not, I don't know. That's what
Pay
I'll
for it
say.
yourself,
I'm
buddy.
like that's basically the point I'm
Pay
at.
for it yourself, kiddo.
I'll pay for Grove City, but other than that, I mean, you'd have to really
Mhm.
convince me because Grove City is a great school and I would trust Grove City with my kids, wouldn't trust anywhere else that I know of now. I mean, there
Hey,
are
go to the top of our website at American Spectator. Look at the print issue logo. And we did two print issues ago, and we still have this one up because it's been so popular. We have a list of recommended colleges, conservative colleges. We could do no better than come up with a list of 24 out of about 4,000 in America.
there's 20
But at
you
least
can
there's a
find
couple
your
dozen options.
You can find the pre-approved list there for where your kids can consider.
Right.
That's what you gotta do. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, and make sure that you read the Tim Mellon piece. It's going to be up on the screen and it has been throughout the episode so that you can find it at the American Spectator. We've been so happy to have you join us this weekend and look forward to seeing you next weekend. Make sure that you go to spectator.org for more and that you like, subscribe, stay up to date with the latest episodes, and share with your friends.
You got it. See y'all next week. Thanks, Grace.